We're going to be providing an update on Hawaiian Airlines Flight 35. We'll start with John Snook, our Chief Operating Officer. We'll follow that by Dr. Jim Ireland with the City and County Emergency Services Division. And we also have representatives from the Department of Transportation here to answer any questions. Jim?
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. My name is John Snook. I'm Chief Operating Officer for Hawaiian Airlines. As you are probably already aware, this morning Flight 35 from Phoenix to Honolulu encountered severe air turbulence shortly before descent into Honolulu. We know that there were injuries on board, 20 injuries that we've recorded, 13 of which were serious enough to warrant transportation to local hospitals via ambulance. I want to say I'm very grateful for the support of the emergency services, Jim and his team, the DOT, the police and fire department, who were on site as soon as the aircraft arrived and provided fabulous care for those that were injured. Also want to thank our crew members, 3 of whom were injured during the flight and transported to hospital. And despite that, our crew did a terrific job managing what was a very difficult situation. So we're very grateful for that. Also grateful that it seems at this moment that none of those guests that were transported to hospital are in critical condition. And so we certainly hope that they will make a speedy recovery. We have our employees who are specially trained in care for such a situation that are now at those hospitals, Stroud, Palimomi, and Queens, providing the best care that we can to those guests and providing for their medical needs. And we're also transporting some relatives from outer islands to Honolulu to be with those guests who are currently in hospital. With that, I'll pass it over to Jim to talk a little bit about the medical status of the incident, and then perhaps we'll take questions after that. Go ahead, Jim. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ireland. I'm the Director of the Honolulu Emergency Services Department. A little after 11 today, our communications center was notified about this incident on the Hawaiian Air. On the airport property, there is a 24/7 paramedic from American Medical Response on scene. And we also have our rescue firefighters from the state in 2 stations here who are the initial responders to any emergency on the airport. They were the initial responders. The Assistant Chief Tabula was the scene commander, and with American Medical Response paramedics, the Medical Incident Command and Transport and Triage officers. My understanding is they called for additional backup. 7 AMR ambulances responded, as well as 1 ambulance from the City and County of Honolulu. Once the patients were triaged and assessed, well, the initial call was there's potentially 36 injured, but this also included people with some nausea and very, very minor injuries. But after the triage area was set up, 20 ended up needing to go to the hospital. 11 were triaged as serious, and 9 were triaged as minor. 13 of those 20 went by ground ambulance, both AMR and the City and County of Honolulu. 7 went by Honolulu City bus. They were all very, very minor injuries, and they were accompanied by paramedic and medical staff. Initially, we did have a triage report that there were critical injuries at the scene, but on retriage, by the time they went to the hospital, those injuries were considered serious. We are also very happy and we feel it's fortunate that there were not any deaths or other critical injuries, and we're also very hopeful that all will recover and make a full recovery, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of them and their families. It was a team response today. I felt all the providers worked well together, and I'm just appreciative to all the various other agencies that were here assisting us, including the sheriffs, Securitas, airports personnel, and of course our own personnel from the City and County, AMR, and Airport Fire Rescue. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So we'd be happy to take questions at this point in time. Yes?
Is this the worst turbulence incident that Hawaiian Air has ever had, and how common are turbulence incidents for you?
So it's certainly the worst one that I've been around for. I can't report back. We've been around 93 years, so it's entirely conceivable there was something worse than that in our history. They are relatively uncommon. We haven't experienced an incident of this nature in recent history, for sure. So relatively uncommon, I would say.
The National Weather Service issued a weather advisory for thunderstorms. I'm wondering, was the flight crew aware of this advisory?
Yes, no, we're very familiar with the current weather forecast. There's a lot of unstable air in the area. The seatbelt sign was on at the time that the incident occurred, and we're obviously in a situation in the islands right now where we're dealing with a lot of unstable air and weather conditions that are certainly difficult to deal with if you're an airline.
Was the flight crew informed that there might be a particularly dark patch or pocket?
No, there was no warning of this particular patch of air at that altitude was in any way dangerous. It caught everybody by surprise, which is often the case. There was an incident, I think, similar incident 5 years ago with Air Canada that had a very similar situation where you just don't know it's coming.
So I guess, can you go more into detail how much altitude was lost and just how quickly this is happening?
So we don't have specifics on how much altitude was lost. That will be part of the follow-up investigation. Our focus right now is making sure that we're looking after our guests who are injured and in hospital, and that's really where we spend most of our time. We'll pivot to a full investigation of the specifics, and the flight data recorder will give us specifics about what altitude loss occurred during the turbulence itself.
And what kind of communication was, I guess, being said to the passengers while this was happening?
Well, we started descent almost directly afterwards, and so at that point in time, we declared an emergency, given the number of injuries on board, and made a direct approach to the airport, and was given priority to land the aircraft. Yes, sir.
What was the struggle that the pilot had to go through to keep this still flyable?
Oh, so I don't think there was a struggle in the cockpit in any way. These aircraft are designed to deal with this sort of level of turbulence, and are designed to recover from it without issue. So I wouldn't say there was a struggle in the cockpit in any regard.
Now, and there's reports that there may have been some kind of damage inside the airplane itself because of the turbulence. Can you go into that, please?
Yes, well, I don't have all the facts yet, but we do know that there's internal damage to the aircraft, some panels that are bent and buckled that will need replacing, and the aircraft is undergoing a thorough inspection. Is going to require some maintenance work before we put it back in the air, mainly internal components in the cabin. From an airworthiness perspective, the aircraft is designed to be able to deal with this level of turbulence.
Okay, were there any employees injured as well?
Yes, there were. We had 3 flight attendants that were injured. They were up and about in the cabin, and they were actually transported to hospital. So we were obviously very concerned about their status, and we've got employee personnel at the hospitals with them, making sure that they make a speedy recovery.
Also, we're hearing that there were a lot of off-duty flight attendants on board. Can you confirm, was there to assist as well?
I know that we had at least one off-duty employee on board the aircraft. I can't comment on how many there were, but I know that they engaged to assist.
Can you describe what was going on inside the plane at the time the turbulence hit? Like, were passengers lined up outside the bathroom? Did the bathroom before landing?
I can't comment on that yet. Obviously, that's going to be part of the investigation, and we'll get to that as soon as we've taken care of the immediate priority, which is looking after people who are injured.
Any other flights diverted due to the weather? It's my understanding that flights meant to Maui were diverted to Kona?
Yes, we've had 3 diversions today. This afternoon, as the weather system moved south, Maui got hit pretty hard with the weather system, and visibility got down to a level which required us to divert 3 aircraft. So that's the status at this moment. So nothing to do with turbulence. That is related to visibility, low visibility in Maui.
Based on that, are you concerned at all? This time of year, you've had the flight that went down recently, the air flight that went down. You've got this flight going down. It seems like this is a windy or rough time right now. Is there any concern right now, or cutting flights or anything and what precautions are you taking?
So we obviously place safety at the highest level of everything we do, and I don't think you can draw any connection between the recent care flight situation and the turbulence issue that we had today. That investigation is still ongoing, so I can't comment on that. We monitor the weather very carefully, and whenever there's possibilities of turbulence, we'll put on a seatbelt sign and ask people to buckle up. I would always recommend that people stay buckled whether the seatbelt sign is on or not, because sometimes these air pockets occur with no warning whatsoever. And so certainly recommend that no matter when you're traveling. Yes, sir.
Do you guys, do the pilots recall ever seeing any thunderstorms or any lightning in that area?
So they were at very high altitude, so they wouldn't have seen that at that altitude. They were at 36,000 feet is my understanding.
In a case of turbulence, is there anything the pilots can do, or is it a case of, buckle up and ride it out? Is there anything they can do in that situation?
Yeah, in that immediate situation, it's a question of just riding through it and changing altitude to avoid further turbulence. So you'll often find that when you're traveling trans-Pacific, you'll hit an area of turbulence, and you'll find that a pilot will alter altitude to try and avoid that area of rough air.
Do you know if the pilots did any of this?
Well, almost immediately after that, it's my understanding he started to descend into Honolulu, because we were just at the top of descent anyway. So, what else?
Is it fairly common to have some turbulence close to Honolulu, especially this time of year because of the weather pattern?
No, I wouldn't say it's particularly common. I mean, there's often turbulence across the Pacific, but it's rare to have that level of extreme turbulence, and that's what caused the challenge today. It was a very extreme case of mid-air turbulence.
Do we know how long it took to ramp up to the extreme turbulence?
I don't know that. We'll obviously get to that once we've conducted the investigation, but I don't have those details yet. Yes?
Could you give us some details about what the investigation is and what that all looks like in the timeline?
Well, so we'll be working with the NTSB because there have been significant injuries on this. The NTSB will want to be involved, and we'll be working with them. And we'll provide data from the flight data recorder to understand exactly what happened. And we'll obviously be interviewing all the crew members, trying to understand how it occurred.
Have you talked to the crew members yet? What's their status of the three?
I haven't personally talked to the three crew members, and we're obviously getting regular updates from our employees who are down at the hospitals with the injured. I can't comment specifically on their health condition.
Can you kind of classify, you've got probably an overview of what the injuries were they more head, were they more leg, and what was it more?
Let me defer to Jim, who's the expert on that.
Just in general, we did see patients with head injuries. At least one, I believe, was for a time rendered unconscious, is the report I got, although when everybody went to the hospital, they were all awake and talking. We had some patients with lacerations, including to the head, definitely bumps and bruises. A large number of people, somewhere around maybe 10 or so, were experienced nausea and vomiting, which isn't really an injury, but just consequences of the extreme motion. And so that's what when we say there's 36 people injured, it doesn't really necessarily mean injured, it just means needing medical attention. So that people with actual injuries as well as nausea and vomiting, just basically motion sickness. And so fortunately, once they were all triaged by the AMR triage officer, we did only find 20 that needed to go to hospital. And I say only 20, that's still a significant number, but at least it wasn't 36. And also, once we did the secondary triage, nobody was critical. And so, for me, it's the holidays, everybody's trying to come here for vacation or come back home. It's generally a time when people are happy. And so this is obviously something that's, they didn't plan for in their journey here. And again, we're just we feel very fortunate that the injuries weren't more severe. Significant, definitely need care. I'm glad they're all at our hospitals and they're all getting great care. I went to Queens ER and visited with a couple of the folks from the airplane. And so, no fatalities, nobody in critical condition at the hospital is just, for me, an event, but it could have been so much worse. And I'm just really grateful, again, for Hawaiian and their support, AMR, Crash Fire here at the airport, and our team from the city that came together just to take care of everybody expeditiously and get them to the hospitals, where, again, I know they'll be great care. get great care. The other thing that I think is important to note is on Oahu, we have many hospitals. We have 2 trauma centers, and there's capacity here. And I'm fortunate, it's fortunate that this was an event that happened here, where we have on island on any one day between the city and AMR more than 30 ambulances on island, and we have 2 trauma centers and other hospitals who can pitch in and help. So that capacity was great today, because we all know there's flu, RSV, still some COVID. We've been seeing in the news lately the hospitals are busy, but all these respective hospitals were up, stood their teams up, called in extra people as needed, and were able to accommodate all these patients that we brought them, on top of everybody else they're taking care of. So really want to thank the hospitals too, and not just Queen, Straub, and Polimomi that took these patients, because when they got all these patients, all the other folks on Oahu that needed medical care maybe couldn't go to those hospitals because they were busy, so they went to the others like Kuakini, Castle, Queens West, Wahiawa. So it was really a true team effort amongst everyone in the community, and I'm just really appreciative of that.
Could you go over some details about the plane itself, how many people were on it at the time, what type of that kind of stuff? How old?
Yeah, it was an A330-200 with 278 passengers and 10 crew members on board, 2 pilots and 8 flight attendants.
Can you go over those? How
Sorry.
many crew members is it?
10 crew members, 2 pilots, 8 flight attendants, 278 guests on
How
board.
many does the plane hold?
That's full.
That was full?
That's full, yeah.
Every seat occupied?
Every seat occupied, yeah. And again, I think Jim said it well, very grateful and thankful that the extent of the injuries were non-critical, and it could have been worse, certainly. So we're very grateful for that.
There's been some reports from some of the passengers that some of the passengers may have hit their heads, and can you confirm any of that?
I can only speculate on that, given the nature of the injuries and the damage in the aircraft, showing damage to some of the paneling. So that's likely what happened. And in one of these incidents, that's often the case. Injuries occur because the aircraft goes down, and if you don't have your seatbelt on, you stay where you are as the aircraft goes down. And that's how those injuries occur.
So are you attributing all the injuries or most of the injuries to not having seatbelts on?
I can't definitively say that. Obviously, the investigation will uncover that. We know that some of the individuals who were injured didn't have seatbelts on.
What's needed to try to make sure passengers are wearing a seatbelt? And did that happen today as well?
Again, I'm going to have to look back at the investigation to understand, aside from the seatbelt sign being on, what other measures were taken. But that'll come out in the investigation.
Jim, how many paramedics were deployed initially, and then kind of how long did their slots take?
There's a paramedic at the airport from American Medical Response at all times. So that paramedic got to the gate very quickly, as well as the rescue firefighters who are stationed here at the airport. And that's their role, to be here for any emergency on airport property. Crews began coming in from different parts on the island. Our ambulance that responded here is based at the airport on Koapaka Street, so they were really just 1 block away. 7 ambulances from American Medical Response responded at various times. When I went to the scene myself at the gate, I probably saw at least 20 paramedics, EMTs, and firefighters from the various agencies.
I just wondered today, we're expecting severe weather, and I don't know if you've had other unusual cases today of incidents that your people had to respond to because of the severe weather, and how that might have impacted that as well.
Well, I came in today. I normally don't work on Sundays, but I came in today, and I've been listening to our EMS radio, and there's been quite a few vehicle accidents this morning. I don't know the circumstances of all of them, but it seems like, and again, it's the holiday season. I think people are trying to get some last-minute shopping done. We know bad weather's coming tonight. I don't know why there's been a bunch of vehicle accidents this morning, but we have been dealing with those. The City Emergency Operations Center is opening up at 4 o'clock today, and if it's past 4, they've opened. And at the city, we are getting ready for what's coming tonight and tomorrow. So we are expecting events related to weather. We also have a large surf on the North Shore. So we have been preparing throughout today for weather-related incidents. I can't say that this was on my mind when I got up this morning. But just to reiterate what's been said a bunch of times, I'm just really happy that it looks like everybody's going to survive. There were no fatalities, and I'm hoping folks don't have to stay in the hospital too long and can get back to their loved ones, whether they live here or are on vacation, and of course the crew members.
Do we know how many have actually been admitted and are checked in and are probably going to be spending the night?
You know, I don't know that, and really once we hand those patients off to the hospital, that's really between the families and the hospital, and we don't generally report on that. And there is individual privacy restrictions on what each person has, potentially wrong with them. So beyond today, unless any of the hospitals give a statement, I don't have any more information once we hand those patients off.
John, I kind of wondered, given the fact that the most severe weather hasn't really come through as part of this weather incident, what are you folks now doing, and has this incident affected how you're measuring that?
Well, we obviously have communicated the fact that this incident occurred to all of our employees, including our flight crews. Our procedures are built to avoid these things at all times. And so we'll be ensuring that we follow all the procedures that we have in place. I think this is obviously an isolated incident. We fly in difficult weather conditions all the time across the United States. And obviously this is very regrettable, but I don't think it is likely to be a trend associated with the weather pattern that's coming through. But we've certainly increased our vigilance to ensure that we keep our guests safe. That's absolutely our number one priority.
John, do you know if the plane was descending when it hit the turbulence?
We don't have the specifics on exactly whether it was at the top of descent or it started descent. So we'll find that out in the investigation once we get the data from the flight data recorder.
Also, do you know if turbulence is affecting other flights you guys have? I've talked to a passenger from an inter-island flight.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it is bumpy out there. That's just part of flying in weather when there's weather around. As I say, we fly through difficult weather all the time and have avoided this sort of incidents for a long, long time. So it's very unfortunate this happened today, but it's not a precursor to other incidents, I don't believe.
We see NTSB investigations go from months to years. Is there a timeline for this one?
Couldn't comment on that. Obviously, we'll work closely with the NTSB and help them with whatever they need to know. Okay.
All right, well, yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks very much for coming.